This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, with Giuseppe Vafanculo in the District of Criminals and David Scorpio in the exotic land of Ecuador. We're here to give you the report about what's going on Election Day 2020. David Horowitz has given a report that the polls show a map nearly identical to 2016. If you listen to the commentators, Trump is underperforming, doesn't have a prayer. But if you look at the real clear politics, the situation is very much in line with the way it was in 2016. Here's Horowitz's map. He still has all the Pacific Coast states going for Biden, and of course, a number of others. He properly shows Wisconsin, however, going for Trump. Florida, I predict, is also going to go for Trump, possibly Virginia and others as well. I think it could even be a clean sweep, although that's not a common view. Meanwhile, the Democrats are sending me hysterical reports about Biden's lead is shrinking in Pennsylvania in the final days, that he's going to go down. That's consistent with other reports. Trump has won the Pennsylvania cookie poll, which called the last three elections. Pretty nice event. A Pennsylvania bakery successfully predicted the last three elections, has revealed its final tally in the contest. Usually they don't do it until the day after. This year, however, they offered updates on the tally as they counted, which saw a surge after President Trump's son, Eric, became aware of the bakery's contest. He traveled there to the town to meet the owner and place his own order of Trump cookies. Look at the count. It's massive. Trump, 27,903 to Biden, 5,104. I mean, how about that? Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, it appears that the silent majority has been building to make this statement. And I think that I don't see how Biden wins this, especially with him and his despicable vice presidential running mate Kamala Harris being so supportive of the burn, loot, and murder Antifa provocateurs, and I think Trump's going to be reelected.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, that's what should happen. I'm concerned. I have a lot of concerns here about what the mainstream media is telling us, just from the point of view of listening to liars lie. They're saying that only 16 states will have the votes tallied by tonight. I don't understand why that would be, given that there's been so much early voting. And according to PBS, Pennsylvania will not have the votes counted tonight. They're already saying that. And for some reason, Ohio is saying that they won't even start counting the votes until tomorrow. I find all of this very suspicious. They're going to pull out all the stops to try to cheat and win. And I do think that if Trump wins, unless it's by a landslide like you predict, Jim, they are going to say it's an illegitimate election, a lot of irregularities, and Trump is not a legitimate president. But we'll just have to wait and see. I'm very concerned about what they're trying to do right now.
Well, Scorpio, I think we've heard that tune before. It was an absolute wonderful introduction on Tucker Carlson tonight. I want to share with everyone. I think this captures exactly, better than anything else I've seen, what's going on this year with our election.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We are just hours away from the national election, and suddenly there is so much going on, so much news, it is impossible to metabolize. claims and slogans and rumors coming in from every direction. Been online recently, checked your phone. It's overwhelming. We're going to have the very latest news throughout the hour tonight. We want to begin a different way. We want to begin this show with a single image. Now, the image doesn't tell you who's going to win or lose tomorrow. Instead, it's a metaphor for the election itself and for the moment that we're living in and will continue to live in. The picture is from a town called Butler, Pennsylvania. It's 35 miles north of Pittsburgh. The president held a rally there over the weekend. Butler's like a lot of places you'll find in this country once you head inland from the coasts. It's a former industrial town. They made Pullman rail cars there for many years, but it's been losing population for decades. There's still a lot of nice people in Butler. For 60 grand, you can buy a decent house there. It's a place you might be happy in. But our professional class is not impressed by Butler. They don't consider Butler, Pennsylvania, or places like it, the future. To them, places like Butler are embarrassing relics of a past best forgotten. The men of Butler may have built this country, and they did, but they mean nothing to our leaders now. You can be certain of that because when large numbers of people in Butler started killing themselves with narcotics, no one in Washington or New York or Los Angeles said a word about it. And so it continued. There have now been so many opioid deaths in Butler that a few years ago, residents built an overdose memorial in the middle of town. MSNBC didn't cover that. So given all of that, it was interesting how the people around Butler feel about Donald Trump. Here are the pictures of the president's rally there on Saturday night. Tens of thousands of people came. So many people that the crowd obscured the horizon. It looked like a visit from the Pope. When was the last time a political speech drew that many people? Well, the media didn't ask. Instead, they attacked the rally as a super spreader event. Trump endangers thousands in Pennsylvania. Okay, we'll leave the epidemiology to CNN. But the question still hung in the air. Why did all those people come? Why? They must have known that Donald Trump is the most evil man who's ever lived. They've heard that every day for 5 years. They know that people who support Donald Trump are also evil. They're bigots, they're morons, they're racist cult members. They know that Americans have been fired from their jobs for supporting Donald Trump. Not to mention kicked off social media, belittled by their kids' teachers, shunned by decent society. Only losers and freaks support Donald Trump. People in Butler knew all of that. But on Saturday, they went to the Donald Trump rally anyway. Why exactly did they do that? We should be pondering that question deeply as we watch tomorrow's returns and as we live through the aftermath of them. Millions of Americans sincerely love Donald Trump. They love him in spite of everything they've heard. They love him often in spite of himself. They're not deluded. They know exactly who Trump is. They love him anyway. They love Donald Trump because no one else loves them. The country they built, the country their ancestors fought for over hundreds of years, has left them to die in their unfashionable little towns, mocked and despised by the sneering half-wits with finance degrees, but no actual skills, who seem to run everything all of a sudden. Whatever Donald Trump's faults, he is better than the rest of the people in charge. At least he doesn't hate them for their weakness. Donald Trump, in other words, is and has always been a living indictment of the people who run this country. That was true 4 years ago when Trump came out of nowhere to win the presidency, and it's every bit as true right now. Maybe even more true than it's ever been. And it will remain true, regardless of whether Donald Trump wins re-election. Trump rose because they failed. It's as simple as that. If the people in charge had done a halfway decent job with the country they inherited, if they'd cared about anything other than themselves, even for just a moment, Donald Trump would still be hosting Celebrity Apprentice. But they didn't. Instead, they were incompetent and narcissistic and cruel and relentlessly dishonest. They wrecked what they didn't build. They lied about it. They hurt anyone who told the truth about what they were doing. That's true. We watched. America is still a great country, the best in the world, but our ruling class is disgusting. A vote for Trump is a vote against them. That's what's going on in that picture. That's what's going on in this country.
I got to tell you, I think that's the most brilliant depiction of what's actually going on here in this election and the Trump phenomenon I've ever heard. Your thoughts, Giuseppe?
I think that for mainstream broadcast television, that's as close to the truth as Tucker can go. The real truth that maybe he sees, maybe he doesn't, as the globalist parasites, the internationalist Jew, the banksters, as a gangster with a banker combination, wants to take over the world. And they're pretty close to doing it. They want to destroy sovereign nations. So they are destroying towns like Butler, Pennsylvania, and Butler, Wisconsin, the Rust Belt, the flyover states. They're making life horrific. And it's not just backing a buffoon like Joe Biden and a Luciferian philatrix like Kamala Harris. They're behind propping up Bill Gates in his 10-year initiative to become the global vaccine messiah, which now is essentially the scamdemic that's destroying the middle class, destroying entrepreneurialism, destroying people trying to make a living. So he is dead on, but he can't say who's really behind it, and that they own hook, line, and sinker via either blackmail, because they have these politicians raping 10-year-old boys or girls, or they're bought off, or they actually believe the globalist lies. But either way, what's really going on is the people in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the rest of the so-called flyover states love this nation, the sovereign republic of the United States, and are waking up to the fact that these globalist parasites, these satanic bloodsuckers, are trying to destroy this country. And hopefully they take care of business. The one powerful tool we have is numbers, and we should escort every dual citizen traitor out of this country on a steamer to Israel. And the ones who have murdered American troops and American citizens, they need to be tried and swiftly hanged in public.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Great points, Giuseppe. And, Tucker can't come out and say that this is all part of a plan that's been in effect for, the better part of 50 years in earnest. It's not because of incompetence or narcissism. This is a deliberate plan to destroy the manufacturing base of the United States. And, those images of that rally were absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
It's like a rock star is in town. And of course, the other interesting thing that just infuriates the mainstream media is that these rallies show that none of these people really give a rat's ass about COVID. They're not afraid. They want to go and live their life and make their voice heard. And that infuriates these mainstream media talking heads. It's absolutely incredible. And, just today, the mainstream media is saying that 700 people have died directly due to being exposed to COVID at Trump's rallies. 700 people dead. So they're saying the president is a mass murderer. And of course, that's just a phony statistic. How could they possibly know? And these people are not afraid. The narrative is falling apart, and that's what infuriates our global elite so much right now.
Very nice. Very nice. I thought it was absolutely sensational. I was just affected by what Tucker did last night. Meanwhile, we have two national polls shifting toward Trump over the weekend, showing a statistical tie. These are two of the most accurate national pollsters showing the movement. The IDB-TIPP tracking poll had former Vice President Biden up consistently 5 to 6 points, but on Monday, his lead had shrunk to just 3.2 within the margin of error. The latest Trump v. Biden poll shows a much tighter race. Today's additional leading shows the Republican having 3.2 in a four-way presidential poll of likely voters, that it shrunk again, whereas his lead had been 5.2 Rasmussen showed a 2-point move toward the president. There's much more. Mail-in ballots, however, are rejected at a higher rate than in person. If more Democrats than Republicans voted by mail, therefore, the increased rejection rate could cut into their margin. The Black and Hispanic support for Trump, of course, has been growing and growing and growing. Meanwhile, in Lancaster County, the crowd goes nuts for Ivanka. She's wonderful. They were just having a great time celebrating. Ivanka spoke to hundreds of people at the Wyndham Resort and Expo Center in East Limpeter Township. If you want future job safety, opportunity, and freedom, there's one choice in this election, and that choice is Donald J. Trump. I like it. I think it's telling. I think it's another sign that the situation is in Trump's favor, but it's all a question of the honesty of the vote. As Scorpio's concerns, I think, are totally well-founded. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
You know, that's you've repeatedly used articles by John Nolte. He's a good writer and investigative journalist, and at the end of that article, he mentions a key point where he writes, "Keep in mind that reputable pollsters putting good faith effort into finding those shy voters have Trump ahead in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, and barely behind in Nevada and Wisconsin. Even without Nevada and Wisconsin, that's enough for Trump to win his second term." And I think Wisconsin, I have a lot of family and friends back there. And other than the handful of Trump derangement syndrome fools, most people are voting for Trump. They're sick. They understand the scam-demic. They understand what the globalists are doing to this country. And for whatever reason, Trump is now the man who has to carry the water for a nationalist populist movement. And in some ways, it's absurd because he's a wealthy billionaire New York type. But, sometimes the universe puts you in a position to do things you don't expect to do. And now Trump is the last hope for a nationalist populist country, the sovereign republic of the United States of America.
Yeah, not only is Trump a fantastic candidate and an energetic and inspiring campaigner, but the Democrats have run a pathetic, a terrible campaign. They've had their candidate in the basement. They've even been obligated to put out a body double because he's not only suffering from dementia, but from incontinence as well. I mean, what a disgrace. Why would anyone think under these circumstances that the Democrats could prevail? Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think there's some other things that work here too. Why would any working class individual vote for Biden given what his campaign promises have been? And I think, a lot of people are probably afraid to publicly say that they're going to vote for Trump, which only means that there's more and more people. There's a secret army of people that are going to vote for Trump that aren't admitting so publicly. And, Giuseppe touched upon an interesting point that, Trump is a billionaire from New York City. But one thing that's so, that separates him from other billionaires is, he grew up talking to people that were building the buildings for his father. So he grew up around all these working guys he builds things. He's not someone that just shuffles around papers and invests in the stock market. They're building real buildings, real hotels, and with real jobs. And so it's very clear to me that he has some understanding about how important working class people are. And the PBS is claiming as of this morning that Joe Biden has a firm 11-point lead, which I couldn't help but laugh when I heard it. And, Joe Biden is hiding behind this COVID crisis, because if it wasn't for COVID, it would be very clear that the man cannot get a rally of more than a few hundred people to save his life. And they're just hiding behind, it's because of COVID that we're not having big rallies. Yeah, right.
Scorpio, for Joe Biden, a couple hundred would be a great success. It's not happening. He's not getting that kind of turnout. It's unbelievable how bad a campaign he has run. Meanwhile, Mark Zuckerberg, there's a risk of civil unrest across the country. I don't think you have to be in the position of running Facebook to make this call, but there you have the CEO of Facebook making it. Zuckerberg stated, if any candidate or campaign tries to declare victory before the final results are called, we'll put a notification on top of people's Facebook and Instagram, letting them know results aren't final yet. We'll put an informational label on the candidate's post, meaning clearly he wants to continue to interfere in the outcome. Meanwhile, Democrat cities are boarding up. All the proof you need that the left shouldn't have federal power, says Kayleigh McEnany, who's just doing a wonderful job as press secretary. The Biden Democratic Party is threatening violence while President Trump is promising law and order. Businesses and retailers in major cities under Democrat control are increasing their security, boarding up their windows, taking other measures, whether it's in Portland, New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, Washington, Seattle, of necessity. They're all Democratic cities, and they're all worried about the outcome, rioting, looting, and more. We deserve the great American tradition of democracy, of peaceful elections, of accepting the vote of the American people. But the boarded up windows, the closed down stores tell you all you need to know about the modern American left. The violence is unacceptable, and they are not deserving of federal power. Indeed, Joe Biden of late has been warning about the radical right, but the right isn't performing this looting. The right isn't ripping off the country. The right isn't performing arson. Michigan gun stores, meanwhile, are cleaned out over fears about election unrest. How appropriate. They don't even know the process. They want to buy guns. I'm getting about 100 calls a day about it. He's struggling to keep up with demand. Normally, I'd have 100 guns in this cabinet right here, but they've been sold twice over. The store's been cleaned out several times. How totally appropriate. Because the Democrats, after all, want to defund the police. They're dismantling the police. It's every man for himself, and the public knows it. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Jim, 75 years and 5 days ago, October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles did his live H.G. Wells broadcast of War of the Worlds. People who heard that broadcast believed it was happening and freaked out on an epic scale. That told the leaders of the day just how powerful the mass media could be for entrainment and fear-mongering. And now, 75 years and 5 days later, that's all we're seeing from the globalist-controlled mass media. Be afraid of the common cold coronavirus, even though 99.997% of anyone under the age of 65 will survive it. Be so afraid. We're all going to die. No, we're not. It's just a shittily made bioweapon that killed a few people and made some people really sick, was mistreated and misdiagnosed, and caused comorbidity deaths to the tune of 95%, where you were dying of cancer. So instead of living for 3 months, you died 3 months early. Geez, that's sad, but it was coming anyway. This fear-mongering, this hypnotic entrancement by the mass media sadly causes many, many people to not be able to think clearly or critically. The so-called deplorables can still think clearly and critically, and they're voting in record numbers for Donald Trump, and God bless them for doing so.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Great points, Giuseppe. Yeah, it's like the old line from The Wizard of Oz, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. That's what the newscast is every single night. It's nothing but fear. And, as far as Mark Zuckerberg, this guy's looking more like a cyborg every day.
He looks like Data on Star Trek.
He's starting to look like Data from Star Trek. It's really bizarre. You've got to wonder, and of course, there's no question in my mind that Zuckerberg has the hand of the CIA firmly up his backside and has since the very beginning. So that's this is a company that's encouraged Americans to create a dossier on themselves for free for the intelligence agencies. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah, Facebook began as a CIA operation called LifeLog, and then on the consecutive days, it became privatized as Facebook, and then LifeLog just disappeared because it was a continuation. Here you had a brilliant idea to get the American people to share all their personal data, everything the intelligence agencies could want to know, under the guise of social interaction with their friends and relatives. It was a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
And if it were not being exploited for malevolent purposes by the agency, it would be wonderful. But it's obviously being administered by the wrong hands and for improper purposes. Further thoughts, Giuseppe?
Well, let me just one last thing.
Go ahead, Scorpio.
Yeah, they created
Scorpio.
a dossier on themselves for free for the intelligence agencies. That's certainly a stroke of genius. And just one last thing, I was watching a video from New York City last night, and the amount of businesses that were boarding up, putting plywood over their windows yesterday is staggering. People are expecting a bad scene coming here from these crazies.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Giuseppe, did you want to add?
Yeah, it's just who cares what Mark Zuckerberg thinks? Just like, why is Bill Gates telling us how bad a potential virus is? He's not a doctor. He's not an epidemiologist. Mark Zuckerberg is just what do you call it? A gossip at an epic digital level. That's all Facebook really is. It's all gossip. What is XYZ doing? Oh, they had a baby. Oh, they got a new car. Oh, they got a new job. It's so worthless of an app.
Well, Americans love gossip and they love to share it with their friends. So, I mean, it's got a valuable social function. The problem is it's being exploited for improper intelligence and corrupt purposes. Very bad. Meanwhile, we had a report yesterday about Lieutenant General McInerney reporting on an Operation Hammer to manipulate voting machines. We have more news about it now, that the Democrats are colluding with the CIA to launch an intelligence operation that alters the voting machine results in Pennsylvania and other swing states. Dave Jonda of Operation Freedom has let out the story with huge implications. His guest was this very general, Tom McInerney, who warns the Democrats and the CIA have put in place a mechanism that can alter the voting results of electronic machines in key swing states to determine the outcome of the election. As McInerney explains, after closing the polls in Pennsylvania and other swing states, the voting machines will be intercepted and then altered using complex algorithms to change them in ways that evade detection, handing a victory to the pre-designated winner, Joe Biden. He explains a covert app called Scorecard steals votes by making sure Democrats always stay about 3% ahead of their Republican rivals. Scorecard steals the election by tampering with the computers at a transfer point. This also explains why Joe Biden said, with great clarity, we have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. It might also explain why he told voters in a recent, small, of course, since it was a Biden rally, that he didn't need their vote, and why Nancy Pelosi said Biden will win no matter what the vote. The deep state has a plan to steal the election by altering votes in key swing states, and if Trump challenges the fraud, he'll be condemned for refusing to accept the outcome of a rigged election. We have seen them laying the foundation. Just keep in mind, over the last 2 days, Trump campaign officials were asking for detailed information about how voting machines are handled in Pennsylvania. According to the anti-Trump Washington Post, the Trump campaign asked officials at Cumberland County for the names of those who transport ballots and voting machines once polls close, the names of people who have access to the ballots afterwards, and the precise location where the ballots are stored, including room numbers. It appears Trump's people are already aware that Democrats are working to fraudulently steal the election by altering votes in Pennsylvania, and they're on making an effort to stop it. However, unless Trump receives an overwhelming wave of votes on Tuesday, beyond the margin of fraud, they have a mechanism they are attempting to use to steal the election. Very serious stuff. Indeed, this is so serious. Let me invite your comments. Giuseppe.
Well, Jim, that is really shocking and good reporting by Dave Janda to bring on the retired general. But Donald Trump, he's a player. He's got an ace in his hole. Remember that Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and the Israelis were so ecstatic they minted a coin. And now they're well on their way to their goal of the building the third temple. Right now it's a mosque, I believe. So Trump's ace in the hole is Section 8200. The Israelis have some of the best hackers, if not the best hackers on the planet. And those people are going to be working against Operation Scorecard. So I wouldn't just count out Donald Trump being hacked and having an election stolen.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, as far as the third temple goes, the Dome of the Rock is where that is supposed to be, and as I think it's the fourth holiest site in Islam. So if they manage to demolish that place, all hell's gonna break loose. So
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see on that one. But one thing I don't understand why they keep saying, well, we can't count all the votes tonight. It's not possible, even though they have more early voting than has ever happened, apparently. But we'll see. And I really believe they're going to pull out all the stops to try to cheat. They can't have another 4 years of a man who has a talent of saying the right thing at the wrong time. And Trump certainly has that talent, like saying the virus is going to go away with or without the vaccine. That's my favorite one personally. And that's the kind of thing you're not supposed to say, and that's why they hate him so much. And of course,
Scorpio, your point about early voting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Your point about early voting is supplemented by the voting machines. That was the reason we were supposed to have them, to give them a rapid processing of the count, so we'd know already on election day who won.
Exactly right. So what's going on here? There's something stinks, man. And so Trump's not going along with the climate change agenda or the COVID agenda. So they want this man out of office, and they're going to pull out all the stops to do it. But I just don't think they can only put their finger on the scale so hard to cheat. I think they're going to have a hard time pulling it off.
I think so too, and I'm not a religious person, but I certainly would, if I were, would be praying to God that it should not happen. Hillary, needless to say, has to insert herself one way or another, so she's put out a pointless tweet about let's win back our democracy. I think Hillary's been playing a role behind the scene. She wrote, if you've already voted, thank you. If you haven't, today's the day. Let's finish the job and win back our democracy. With the campaign poster reading all together now, another one of these meaningless Hillary-style declarations or slogans. Meanwhile, the Michigan governor, up to her tyrannical best, wants to give 6 months in prison if businesses don't surveil their customers with contact tracing. This woman is unbelievably bad. If you want analogies to the Wizard of Oz, I mean, you could not have a better candidate for a wicked witch than Gretchen Whitmer. The order announced Friday comes as Michigan's Democratic governor and her administration began backtracking on the latest reopening plan in tightening COVID-19 restrictions, citing rising hospitalizations and deaths, which of course are coming from the flu. They're counting all flu deaths now as COVID-19. Here's a man that may be the most principled and courageous in the world today, David Icke, doing an interview about the situation.
Well, what's happening all over the world is enough months have passed now. Early on, lots of people were persuaded there was a deadly virus, so they accepted lockdown. But as the months have passed and their personal experience and the government's narrative bear no resemblance to each other, more and more people all over the world, it's increasing all the time, in country after country after country, are realizing that they are part of a scam they've been had. And the scam is to transform human society using the excuse of this fake virus. So what they're doing is, in the name of health, they are destroying the world economy, they are destroying people's businesses, and they're destroying people's livelihoods. And this next series of lockdowns that apparently are now planned are designed to finish off so many of the businesses that have hung on for dear life this far. Why? Because when the population has no access to independent employment, they become dependent upon the state. And what they're now starting to suggest more and more loudly and more frequently is something that's been in my books for literally decades. And that's the plan to introduce what they call a guaranteed income. And the guaranteed income will be presented as a way of giving people a survival income, if that, because all the jobs have gone, with AI taking more and more jobs as well. But the idea is that this will not be a benevolent government. Benevolent governments is meant to be worldwide, saying here's some money because we care. It's here's some survival, just if survival income. And there comes with that a few consequences, a few riders. First of all, you have to have the Gates vaccine, which has an horrific and sinister agenda for humanity. And it won't be one either, it'll be one after the other. You will have to do what the government says. If you don't do what the government says, you don't get it. And we have a precursor to that in Australia, where the government's introduced legislation that says that if you're on state benefits, see guaranteed income that's coming, and you don't have your child vaccinated according to a whole list of government recommended vaccinations, then you lose benefits. And this is a precursor of the guaranteed income, total control. But to bring that about, you have to destroy people's independent access to income and to employment. And that's what the lockdowns are all about. That's why Professor Neil Ferguson, owned by Gates, funded by Gates, and Imperial College in London, funded by Gates, owned by Gates, came up with the computer models with the ludicrous projections of deaths, 2.2 million in America and 500,000 in Britain, to justify the lockdown, because the lockdown was essential to this plan to destroy the global economy. And people are starting to get it now. They're starting to realize that they've been lassoed, and we're starting now to gather together and push back against it. And with 7-odd billion people in the world, and at the core of this cult, you could get them in one room. If we don't acquiesce with our own enslavement, we cannot be enslaved. And that is where that we are now going towards this realization that we have to stop acquiescing with our own enslavement. And for me, what businesses should be doing, and people employed by those businesses should be doing with these coming lockdowns, is simply refuse to lock down. I haven't worn a mask I haven't put any of this toxic shite on my hands.
No social
Sanitizer, no,
distancing.
so none of it. And you know, I'd spoken in Trafalgar Square twice to 35, 45,000 people, all the people here today. I basically hugged hundreds and hundreds of people. And I somehow have survived the frickin' virus. Because it's a scam and the world is waking up to it. And we have only just begun.
Thank you very much, Mr. Icke.
This guy is just a magnificent human being. He impresses me tremendously. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
David Icke is the real deal. We interviewed him a few weeks ago for the Perfect Triangle and Operation Scorpio, and then we replayed it on the Wisdom Circle. And even through the quantum ether, his energy came through. He is the real deal. Gretchen Whitmer is not. She's a sadistic, malicious psychopath who is a petty tyrant in the classic definition of the word. She's trying to make her bones with this new globalist takeover. And Gretchen, it's stunning to me that Gretchen Whitmer has not been recalled, elected, and thrown out of office. And she is just, I've never worn a mask. And a lot of people need to take off their masks and shove them up Bill Gates's rear end.
Yeah, devoutly to be wished. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I thought that speech from David Icke was excellent. He's hitting on all the right points. And, you know, businesses do need to refuse to close down. Say, come and get me. You know, there's a restaurant in Orange County, California, that has refused to close this entire time. And what he's done is he said, I want you guys to come in because I want a lawsuit. I want to go to court over this. And they've left him alone. In fact, this guy won't even let people with a mask on to come into his restaurant. Okay. I don't have the name in front of me, but I read an article about it. It's really quite incredible. And, you know, one thing that David Icke hit upon that's so important is he talked about personal experience. People's personal experience isn't matching what they're told on television. Nobody knows people that have died and are sick from COVID. It's all a fraud. It's all a scam. And, you know, he talked about the vaccines too. If you look at the documents, they talk about a vaccine schedule, not a single vaccine. It'll be vaccines in perpetuity if we submit to this.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, Scorpio, 100% correct. And Giuseppe well knows that's the idea. They're going to keep sticking us and sticking us and sticking us as modes of control. This is going to be devastating, devastating. Giuseppe, did you want to add?
Oh my God, if you, the viewers, research Operation Warp Speed, it's a nightmare. And that's what is coming. It's time to stand up. This is like that Stephen King novel, The Final Stand. This is good versus evil. And the evil wants to vaccinate you, enslave you, and got to fight back. We have the numbers.
And today is crucial. Meanwhile, the Biden campaign won't say if he'll cooperate with the FBI in a probe of his son Hunter or not, meaning there's a mountain of evidence of Hunter's corruption. Joe's complicit too. In fact, he's the big fish. Just as he's called the big guy, he's the big fish. They should be using Hunter to implicate Joe rather than the other way around. But the question is, are they going to cooperate? Here's a query Breitbart sent to the Biden campaign. In light of Sinclair TV's James Rosen's reporting Thursday evening that the FBI has opened a criminal investigation already in 2019 into Hunter and his associates, focusing on allegations of money laundering, and that it remains open and active, we ask the following. Do former VP Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and brother James intend to cooperate with the investigation? And if elected president, will Joe Biden commit to not pardoning Hunter if the FBI charges him with a crime of which he might be convicted? It seems to me it's much, much more serious than this. Other documents include subpoenas that have been sent to the repairman before to testify before a U.S. District Court of Delaware already back on December 9th of 2019, stating the subpoena was carried out in Wilmington, Delaware, falling under the jurisdictions of the Baltimore field office of the FBI. Meanwhile, Tony Bobulinski says a team of FBI agents who interviewed him for 5 hours last Friday were taking extensive notes and asking multiple questions about Hunter Biden's texts on Burisma in Ukraine. More to come. But of course, we know Joe Biden's been lying to the public. Here's a photograph of him in the Ukraine with a Ukrainian oligarch assessing his son Hunter, which he's denied he's ever done. Here's Hunter smoking crack while he gets a foot job. Here's a good question: whose puppy is it? Where it appears to be the Obama children having sex with Hunter, having brought their little dog along with them. This is just embarrassing and shocking beyond words. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, it seems the crack gives Hunter some powerful, alluring sexual mojo with all those various women with him while he's whacked out on the crack. So I don't know. I think that that's another reason Joe Biden's hoping to steal the election, because if he doesn't, the hammer's going to fall on the Biden crime family, which it dawned on me, Jim, the other day that the Biden crime family is like Peter Sellers' Inspector Clouseau trying to take over the Clinton crime family. I mean, there's such incompetence, and they've left such a easy trail to convict them. You know, the Clintons have done 1,000 times worse, and nobody can touch them.
Have we ever had a worse candidate for president than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to boot? I mean, it's unbelievable. Scorpio, your thoughts?
I can't think of a worse candidate or a worse run campaign or a worse campaign slogan. Build back better is pathetic. It may not be incorrect English, but it certainly is stilted and awkward. And as far as this thing about Hunter Biden, you know, maybe I'm jaded, but I just don't think anything's going to come of it. The FBI has covered up the Kennedy assassination, 9/11, the Boston bombing, and countless other crimes. I'll believe it when I see it.
That's a good point.
Scorpio, I'm sorry to say, but your cynicism may be entirely 100% well-founded, in which case we are likely in short order to find ourselves engaged in a civil war. I mentioned that we have all kinds of evidence that the guy who's playing the role of Joe Biden is not Joe Biden. A formal complaint has been submitted to the FBI about this on behalf of Scott Bennett, a former Army Intel and PSYOPs officer, and myself, related to what's happened here with this abuse of the campaign laws. We know it's not the same guy, where Biden has earlobes and the double does not. Biden has a normal size skull. The double has a narrower. Biden has a rounded chin. The double a cleft. Biden uses a double Windsor for his tie, the double a single. The double has brown eyes. Biden has blue. When they're with the Jill, their behavior, body language is completely different. Biden is always smiling. Jill is glowing, usually holding his hand or his arm. Meanwhile, with the double walking apart, she looks glum. He doesn't look Joe at all. Here's a further confirmation. Absolutely outrageous. I would like to believe that if Biden, by some stretch, were to prevail in this election through cheating, that he'd be disqualified, and that by default, Trump would be the victor because of these campaign violations. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Man, that's amazing and very admirable that you and Scott found a woke attorney to file that. At least it's now in the public record, and that's really great. And like we were chatting off camera, I mean, the likelihood of the FBI jumping on it is just like in that scene from The Big Lebowski, where Lebowski's car was stolen and it was used as a public restroom by homeless, and then they find the car and they call Lebowski and he's smelling it. It smells like awful urine, and he goes, "What are you gonna do, man?" And then the cop just looks at him and says, "We're gonna put 2 of our best guys on it right away," and just mocking him. And unfortunately, that's how serious the FBI is gonna take this. But
I know. You got it exactly right. I'm saddened to say. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, if by chance you get a visit from a guy with dark sunglasses, a crew cut, and a dark suit, give him the 5 words, "I have nothing to say," and refer him to your attorney, because, yeah.
Well, we shall see. To be continued. Meanwhile, Trump signs executive order for 1776 commission. He's learned about all of the anti-American propaganda that's been, being run through the schools and even in instruction given to federal employees. Outrageous. Just signed an order to establish the 1776 Commission. We will stop the radical indoctrination of our students and restore patriotic education to our schools. An accompanying press release noted the commission will work to improve understanding of the history and the principles of the founding of the United States among our nation's rising generations. Totally appropriate. He's previously declared the initiative is a direct counter to the so-called 1619 Project, pushed by the New York Times, which holds at its core that America was built on the back of slavery. The president has labeled it a crusade against American history, called the project toxic propaganda, ideological poison that, if not removed, will dissolve the civil bounds that tie us together and destroy our country. He's right on it. Meanwhile, in an absurd turn that would only occur with a district attorney who is bought and paid for by George Soros, the bail for Kyle Rittenhouse has been set at $2 million. We know Kyle was acting in self-defense. We reported on it extensively. Here is one of those he shot attempting to kill him with a skateboard. I've done extensive review of the evidence here with Danny Siras, who has an extensive background in law enforcement. Find it on the JimTheConspiracyGuy.com. This is something you don't want to miss. You need to understand how the Democratic Party has been playing off of the COVID crisis with Black Lives Matter and Antifa to do harm to this nation. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Jim, what ties those 2 stories together is the globalist parasite. The New York Times and its ridiculous 1619 Project failed to ignore that nearly 90% of all slave ships and slave trading was performed by Jews, and that very, very few actual Americans had anything to do with slavery. It's something like 0.04% of Americans ever owned slaves. Slavery, properly implemented back in the day, was more of like an indentured servant type thing. There were, no human should be a slave. And yet today you can go to Libya, which was destroyed by Hillary Clinton and the globalists, and you can buy a slave for $200 in the public market, Jim. You can go and buy yourself an African slave in Libya any day of the week. And so the phony, pompous, traitorous New York Times can talk all at once about the 1619 Project, and it also is part of the mental indoctrination of this whole critical race theory, which is nothing but communist drivel, and yet it's being taught throughout our schools for the last 30, 40 years. That's why we're on the verge of a civil war, because these communists are filling young, impressionable minds with all these lies. And finally, it's criminal that a real national hero, Kyle Rittenhouse, is looking at being railroaded into a lifetime of prison when he acted in self-defense, and he did the world a favor eliminating 3 radical Bolshevik 2.0 subhumans. The only thing I regret is he didn't get the 4th one in the head instead of the bicep.
I agree with you. Kyle Rittenhouse is an American hero, and he's being treated abusively for purely political purposes. It's outrageous. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, a $2 million bond seems awfully high for a 17-year-old kid with no previous record. It's incredible. And thank God that everyone runs around with a cell phone on their camera nowadays, because otherwise Rittenhouse would be totally screwed.
Oh, yeah.
But given all the videos that are available already, it's going to be hard to get a jury to convict him once people see what actually happened. And, about the slavery, the first slaves that came to America were, in fact, white. They were indentured servants sent by the king. But what they would do is keep adding additional charges onto them, and it made them de facto slaves. And that's simply a matter of fact. And what they've done with this horrible public school system is they've gotten several generations of young people to hate themselves, to hate their ancestors, and to hate their nation. It's absolutely criminal. And again, it's time for some major reform. We need to return to classical education, because guess what, guys? Our ancestors were a lot smarter than we've been told.
Amen.
A lot smarter and a lot better educated. And by virtue of wearing masks, we're killing our brain cells and reducing our IQ in the process. It's stunning. We want to hear from you. Send us your views, fan mail, pro or con, to liveneedtoknow@gmail.com. Liveneedtoknow@gmail.com. Here's a very thoughtful piece that appeared on my blog from David Kraft. The title is certainly provocative. This is about a blog by Kevin Barrett I republished asking whether elections made any difference. I would say the time it mattered, the least was Bush versus John Kerry in 2004, since both were skull and bones and had taken a blood oath to blindly follow the order in exchange for a gold-paid road to riches, power, and fame, where no blunder or skeleton in the closet would hinder their path to the top. Does that sound like W and Ketchup Kerry? Sounds even more like creepy Uncle Joe, and he did not even attend Yale. In my estimation, the only candidate attractive enough, lovable enough, and centrist enough to beat Trump was Tulsi, because she spanned so many gaps and checked so many boxes. She had credibility as a veteran and was not extremist like Bernie or completely unlikable like Pocahontas and Harris, who could not win a popularity contest if her mother was a judge. Have you heard Kamala's brand new faux sister of the hood affectation persona? Is just off the charts for measuring race pandering. It shows how worried they are about minorities leaving the Democrat plantation. The desperation of pulling the Lady Gaga card out of the deck tells me they know they are finished. By the way, most of those imported professional malcontents burning cities and looting aren't even registered to vote. I watched a chunk of all 6 of Trump's rallies in 24 hours. One spanned late Sunday and the wee hours of Monday. His stump speech is such a consistent message, and he is fearless going on the attack. Exactly what Romney lacked. The crowds are gargantuan, and the love vibe for Trump broke the needle of enthusiasm. If you believe the polls that tell you Biden is in the lead, I have some waterfront property for sale in the Everglades. The price is rock bottom and won't last long. Log on to rusucker.com and check out for a virtual tour. Meanwhile, Scorpio, Giuseppe, and I are going to do a live election report tonight. And I hope the outcome will be such that we can praise what was represented here in this response to a brutal attack in Hollywood.
Altercations still happening.
Everybody, let's dance. Young man, walk away from the hate. We're all human, and we don't segregate.
Just like women, help make America great.
We are all in this together. Colors are red, white, and blue, and they stand for every one of you. And together, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make America great. Woo! Everybody sing M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. Let them hear our voice, all you girls and boys. Stand up and make some noise. M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. The American crowd, patriotic and proud. Shout it out loud. That's why when it comes time to vote, just remember, we're all in the same boat. We're together, we're united folks, and we won't let them divide us. Young men, walk away from the hate. We're all human, and we don't segregate. Just like women, help make America great. We are all in this together. Everybody sing M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. Black, white, and brown, from every city and town. We don't let haters keep us down. M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. The American crowd, patriotic and proud. Shout it out loud. M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. Let them hear our voice, all you girls and boys. Stand up and make some noise. M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A. The American crowd, patriotic and proud. Shout it out loud. M-A-G-A. M-A-G-A.
Here we are now for our final thoughts. Giuseppe, your
Well,
final
Jim,
thoughts, my
we're
friend.
beginning our coverage at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. It will be on Facebook Need to Know pages. It will be on at Jim Fetzer Twitter, and it will be on the YouTube Giuseppe Vafanculo page, as well as the Rising Tide Media page. So everybody should tune in. It'll be interesting, to be sure. Dave Kraft's letter was really insightful, really makes excellent points. And I wonder if anybody has the URL areyouasucker.com. Actually, that you could probably make money with it. And secondly, that video, Ricky Rebel, is brilliant, trying to make the point that all races, colors, and creeds can come together in America as we should. But I'm just disappointed that he so blatantly stole Scorpio's day wear for romps in Ecuador look. I mean, I've seen
Scorpio, your final thoughts.
Oh, I don't know what to say about that one. That young man in the tight pants sure can swish around. I'll give him that. And, as far as that attack goes that we saw, that's why I've been saying on my show for some time, I hope all young men are lifting weights, staying in shape, because, predators like that, they attack the weak, not the strong. And this is not the time to be weak and feminine for men. I really
And
do
head
believe
on a
that.
swivel. They're always sucker punch, and that was a sucker punch.
That's right. That's right. But if the guy was a big buffed out dude, I don't think he would have done it.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. And as far as Lady Gaga goes, who cares what she thinks about anything? How long has she been washed up for? Like since the 90s? Come on.
And it's a dude. Lady Gaga's a dude.
Yeah. Read the lyrics to Born This Way.
Well, this is
Reveals a
Jim
lot.
Fetzer in Madison thanking Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador for the excellence of their commentary. Many points I had not heard before. Very, very telling. We'll be back tonight with live coverage of the election. I close with the following. We're at a turning point in this nation's history. And if these bastards steal this election, there's no going back. So, after tonight, after the vote is counted, we're either all singing MEGA to the YMCA or are taking our AR-15s, our 9mm, and our 12 gauge to fight for this nation. That's where we are. You have to understand, there are no two ways about it. Live free or die. Join us tonight as we cover what we hope is going to be a joyful celebration, and we'll play the mega song again. If not, the situation is going to be massive. It's going to be a bloodbath, and America will never be the same. Thanks for watching.